good afternoon. I think we are already there, 15 minutes to a good afternoon, but a nice dynamic morning with so much of uncertainty, and finally we took off. That's what being in India is all about, Vikrant sir, in case you had forgotten. So we thrive in chaos, and we really do our best eventually. So the panel today, the panel discussion, of course, you all know, is about understanding the SDG 3, which is about health and good, well-being, as the nomenclature goes. We are, of course, going to delve and look at health communication and look at science communication and its role in actually being able to understand whether India is prepared enough with these SDG goals, or are we only talking a lot about it? So that's what the panel discussion is really going to be about. My panelists here again, this is an example of a collaboration where the two ladies here really are from my past. I think the three of us have done a lot of work together in health communication. And interestingly, what Vikrant was trying to say here was that we lack academic research identity, so as to say, globally. But the irony is that I think there is so much of research work that is actually happening in India, and that's what I meant. That's what I meant when I said the three of us have done really been in communities and done that kind of work, had the data, have had the insights, but then academically somehow things are not coming together. A platform like ICAN, in my understanding, is going to take this particular, silo business out of currency now. We will all be together looking at research as the fundamental of whatever we do in our lives, right? Whether it's academics, whether it's media, whether it's thinking and strategizing and being policy people, or whether it is us as ordinary consumers of this government's programs and policies, or anything else that may sort of come in our way. So with that, I'll first set a 2-seconder context as to why we are talking about the health. Whereas, when we look at identity, when we look at culture, when we look at agenda setting, we kind of think there are more serious things happening there. So my understanding and take on this is that culture, identity, primarily, are the most dynamic, volatile, whatever the word you might like to choose, basically ever-changing concepts in human life. A culture, although we try to locate it within the past, the present, and the future, essentially is evolving, almost like the Hindu philosophy. It's never linear. It is all going back and coming forth, and basically a big round of trying to look for certain things, purging other things, and moving ahead with new ideas. This is more so because today we are in a technology-driven society. Globally, even if we do not like the pace, we are all running in that race, which is of change, of technology, of trying to grapple with so many things and trying to bring so many things together. It is in this context that while in the last 3 days there is a lot of research papers being read, a lot of discussion happening, a lot of technology being embraced and pushed and thought about, etc., I felt that it was also mandatory for us to go back to the basic. The basic really is a good health. Unless we are all healthy, we cannot be thinking about all those great dreams that we have. And SDG 3 is something that is more of a conceptual framework within which we understand or we evaluate. And here we are actually trying to evaluate India's preparedness. Because India today, that's like another big thing to be kept in mind, is now a very, very important sort of country in the global good. We are economically really up there with our colonizers behind us. And we are also, like, as journalists, you would have seen, I don't know if that's a fake news or new news, but it seems New York Times covered PM Modi. Some people did say on the WhatsApp it's a fake news. So I don't know. However, the fact does remain, he did a great thing there. He's recognized and looked at as somebody who has the future for the globe. And we, as the citizens of his country, therefore, have to have the same spirit and the same limelight on us, right? So it is in this context, and I'm trying to look at the basic thing called our health preparedness, and what is it we are doing as a nation from a policy point of view, from programs point of view, as well as from the point of view of consumers who sort of know what's happening really at the ground level as well. So that is where SDG 3 comes in, to become a part of that culture, of that identity. And is there a need for an agenda setting which is looking at those basic development issues where we still are struggling while we are reaching the stars? Okay, so with that, I open this discussion, and to begin with, I'm going to actually ask Prachi to set a context. Prachi, do tell us all where you think, as a policy strategist, where are we when it comes to SDGs, and where is the preparedness? Like, are we even beginning? Is there like any benchmark that we personally need to look at? Over to you. Please go ahead. Can you take that?
Thank you, Matli. It's a question to answer which can actually take a lot of time and space in itself. But I think we have been associated with the health sector for a long time now, and when India was transitioning from Millennium Development Goals to Sustainable Development Goals, we were very positive about it. And I think, in the beginning, I would like to set the context that, one, India is on track with Sustainable Development Goals, and we should be very positive about it.
So I think we should clap for this.
Yeah. But being a big and the most populous country in the world now, I think it's important to reflect on a few considerations. And as Vikrant was talking about Australia, we add an entire Australia to our population every year. And at any given point of time, an entire Australia is in our trains, traveling from one place to another. So that is the size of the country we are talking about, which is multilingual, multicultural, and from the very beginning, our health policies have not been dictatorial. We have, in last 70 years, constantly urged our population to make choices which are favorable to them. So if I just look at what government has done from the policy perspective in last few decades, I think we have made some remarkable strides. We, from the targeted approach, we are now in the target-free approach arena for several years now. Indian government launched National Rural Health Mission, which has now transcended into National Health Mission, which is focusing, actually all the objectives under National Health Mission are catering to sustainable development goals. We have a universal healthcare scheme, Ayushman Bharat, in India now, which is providing health assurance for at least below poverty line population. And in coming years, we have to see how it can cover the entire country. the country is bothered about digital uh, transformation, and India will leapfrog because we did not have technology in the past, so there were no old school computer systems which were where we were managing our systems. So India is actually leapfrogging into the latest technology.
For which we thank COVID, actually, we being Indians.
Even before COVID, Indian government had National Digital Health Mission,
Yeah.
so that the data can be available, interoperability can be there. So Government of India has actually in every 5 years taken some significant decisions, and we have seen consistent gains on specifically SDG 3 indicators. And I think the top indicator where India made achievements is institutional deliveries.
Yes, MMR, the fact that we were,
which has
yes,
actually reduced
maternal mortality rate has.
Yes. So with institutional deliveries being almost 100% in several states and close to 98-99% in many states, maternal mortality rate has really reduced.
We are at 96 now,
96
whereas
now.
we are hoping to be under 70 as per as the
Yes.
SDG goals go.
So
And we
it's-
have 8 years to
Yeah.
go.
So the last leg is always most difficult. So now we need to really see that what more we need to do. There are a few thoughts on that, and we can talk about it. We are doing well on child mortality also. However, what we have done well on communicable diseases specifically, especially HIV/AIDS, but then COVID came to give us a next level challenge. Cardiovascular diseases, there have been some significant improvements. However, cancer and some other high cost non-communicable diseases remain a challenge,
Yeah.
for us. Just to take this context to more specificity so that people can understand what it means for us. While we have made achievements, so in India, public sector caters to the primary care primarily. Though Government of India has secondary and tertiary care centers, secondary and tertiary care is largely delivered through private sector.
Private sector.
And several cross-sectoral policies and initiatives impact us in delivering quality healthcare, early access to innovations, affordable healthcare, equitable healthcare, gender issues, industry policies. All these issues actually impact SDG 3 directly or indirectly, gender being a primary of them. If we look at from the policy perspective, health system strengthening, Government of India is really doing well. We have quality infrastructure now opening up. We have the doctor to patient ratio also improving in the country now. However, I won't say all is achieved, because infrastructure and manpower, those are, we have to make continuous efforts in the country to keep them going to the optimum benchmark where we want them to be. Our nursing staff is not as what do you say,
Globally acceptable.
compared to global benchmarks. Our nursing staff, their income and all is not comparable, especially in the private sector, so that would impact us. In terms of behavior change communication, I think government has made some very serious
Okay,
efforts.
we'll come to that later.
Yeah.
Right now, the policy and setting a context. And from you, I'm going to straight away leap to KG sir for his comments on, or his understanding on, where is media in all? Because this is what the policy people say, and not everybody is into the policy, understanding the policies and programs. So the media, with its role as the, conduit and fourth pillar.
Thank you, Dr. Maithili. A very good afternoon to everyone. I think that, let's talk about health communication per se. In this country, we never had a culture of health communication. Nobody was trained for health communication. You would be surprised to know that even the IEC, for which there is a substantial commitment in the budgets also, the entire dependency is on the Anganwadi workers rather than communication, rather than technology. The focus is on Anganwadi workers, and they are the most poorly paid, yet the most influential, the most impactful, link between the government and the people. It is these Anganwadi workers who who actually pay from, during COVID, they actually paid from their pockets. They worked without salaries, they were the primary communicators of government policies, schemes, and everything. Let us also not, when we talk about health, I totally agree that much has improved over the years, but health is a state subject. And unfortunately, you find that the condition of primary health centers, particularly in states like Bihar, are really pathetic. I mean, these centers don't exist for most parts. You have exceptions like Kerala, where they are at par with global standards, but you also have, on the other hand, primary health centers which do not have basic facilities. Government hospitals are in a bad shape. And there is a great, I would say, in terms of proportion, majority of the doctors prefer working in the urban areas rather than the rural areas. Rural areas you hardly get, so that is why there has been this consistent demand for, mandatory, like we talk about conscription in the army, there has to be mandatory deployment of doctors in the rural areas. That's important. Coming to the communication fact, the fact is that for defense you need communication, training, strategic communication. But for health, which is such a critical subject, anybody and everybody, any reporter is actually assigned the health beat, which is really unfortunate. You need, because when we did this program, when I was the Director General at Indian Institute of Mass Communication, we, along with UNICEF and the Thomson Reuters Foundation and Oxford University, we evolved this critical appraisal skills program in public health communication, CASP, and we introduced it for the first time in India, for the first time at IIMCs. It was made an integral part of the training program at IIMC. We trained journalists from leading newspapers like Dainik Bhaskar, Dainik Amar Ujala, and this entire thing was based on a concept called evidence-based reporting. Most of the reporting were speculative by nature. There was hardly any scientific basis. I will give you an example. I still remember there was this story which was carried by a lot of Indian newspapers that if pregnant women eat chocolates, they will have happy babies. And you had husbands every day carrying lots of chocolates and really forcing their wives to eat. I mean, this study hardly had any scientific basis, but this was widely. Similarly, drinking coffee is helpful, drinking coffee is harmful. These are all pushed by powerful lobbies, influential lobbies, pharma lobbies, which are pushing these things. But the journalists are unable to distinguish in the absence of training. I mean, the journalists need to be trained that these are the journals like Lancet, like the journals which are highly influential journals which have credibility, huge credibility. They have to be referred to. There can be Indian journals also. ICMR has its own journals. They can be referred to. But this kind of speculative reporting, because I was involved in the polio communication program along with WHO, and I still remember that particularly the language media, which is vulnerable, very vulnerable, and that is where you had stories. I mean, particularly in Western UP and in Hooghly district, where we had to make effective intervention because the Pulse polio program, they had said that this is an American conspiracy targeting a particular community, and the whole idea was to ensure that their fertility rates are down. This was the kind of, and the same thing happened during COVID also, the COVID vaccinations. You had all these things. Now in the absence of training, so I think the most critical component, to come to your question, and is that there is hardly any training in Indian media to cover health issues. Often, you have also clubbed here science and health communication. Often the science correspondent is expected to do health stories also. The health correspondent is expected to do science stories also. Now these are different disciplines altogether. Certainly health is part of science, but health communication needs training. We need to train our journalists to cover health. It's a specialized area where you need a specialized training.
So, okay, thanks, KG. Your perspective is very interesting, because the media lash that you're talking about, Kalyani and I have been a part of witnessing that, and actually developing communication in order to see that that particular problem in Western UP was sorted. In fact, that is when strategically we thought of getting the religious leaders in, and there were these conferences held in Jamia in order to talk to them and make them go back to the community, etc. So high time to bring in Kalyani into the scene, because KG's perspective is a very journalism and government perspective, and I would like to really contest one thing which he said, which is about communication not being done or not being understood, which is not correct. Communication has been a mandatory part of World Bank funding in India since the 1980s, if not early 90s. Yeah, so yeah, and it was a part, but it was not the journalists. It used to be development communication experts who have been working on it, and that is where Kalyani belongs. We had set up way back the first universal immunization program, which was started in 1990s, is something that Thomson Social had started, and there we were taking the expertise. Forget India didn't have that. There was Johns Hopkins University, USAID. In fact, UNICEF has joined the bandwagon quite late. It has been USAID, which is United Nations Development Sector Organization in India, along with the Johns Hopkins University, correct? Over to you. This is your
pretty much. Okay, interesting, where I figured in this conversation. Prachi's given a great background of, policy and the programs that we have. We've got the opinion about journalism really in spreading information, or misinformation and disinformation, as we've soon become, very familiar with. Mathili, thank you for bringing this up about communication. See, what I believe that is that in India and in many other countries also, everybody thinks they're a communicator. Yeah. Okay, but the point is, we must ask ourselves, what is the purpose of that communication? There are so many different tasks. Now, journalism, we are expected them to provide correct information, to increase the knowledge bank amongst people and all that. But at the same time, just one-way communication which is meant to disseminate makes no sense. The purpose of disseminating any information is to get people to do something with that information. Is that just to think about it? Just to say, oh, I didn't know that before? Or, yes, I must change the way I think about situations or behaviors and perform in that matter. This brand has told me something different. But it can't take the push from there. There are several areas from where communication and information comes out, and I think IEC is what someone spoke about just a while back. You talked about IEC, which is really old-fashioned, because all you're saying is there's information, you're educating people through information, and the way you're putting it across is through communication. Ultimately, the goals of SDG and anything that we're talking about is about change, better social change, progressive social change. And to be able to do that, you have to finally look at whose change are we really trying to make a difference to. It's the people, obviously, as SDG also focuses on. And we all know that it's about really the marginalized and the disadvantaged families who lack the access to education, quality healthcare, and good means of economic livelihood as well. How much are these services reaching them, and how much do the people understand at that level that they need to demand those services? And that's where communication, according to me, and at least one of the roles, is so critical. Ultimately, how do you get people to change their behaviors, changing at an individual level, at a community level, which ultimately starts dictating what social change is all about. Just to give a few examples, and I can talk forever, and that's why I requested Maithili also, please interject if you want me to focus in a particular area. I have a tendency to ramble a lot. But let's look at the SDGs. Yes, maternal mortality, infant mortality, institutional delivery, these are ones which are changing. I just read recently, however, that although it is moving, it is still a long way to go and we have only 7 years left. COVID unfortunately came in through a big spanner in the works. But it's not the first time India has seen something like that. Around 2004, 2003, 2004, when India was already behind the global mandate for polio eradication, polio took on such a big, a profile. All efforts were focused on that, as a result of which RI suffered. Now we're seeing that again, what's happened right now.
RI is respiratory.
No, routine immunization.
Routine
Routine
sorry.
immunization. I'm sorry, I'm used to using a lot of abbreviations.
So, because there are
too.
teachers, there are students and scholars, just simplify.
Sure. And please, in case I'm not understood, to ask. And now COVID came in through a spanner in the works to SDGs because apart from the mortality and morbidity, it was also a huge burden on the public healthcare system, not just public healthcare, but also the private healthcare. And I would like to take this example because this is so relevant on our minds about COVID. Communication came from everywhere. The journalists, the media, people, word of mouth, conspiracy theories, everything which kind of gave...
The WhatsApp industry.
Everything.
Right?
So media was primarily responsible for disseminating all this incorrect stuff, as a result of which there was a lot of apprehension, misinformation, misconception, myths, social media, every media. Yes, but the thing is that media is a channel, right? It's a channel through which information is provided. There is no specific attack on anything out here. Okay. And again, research was something we talked about earlier. As part of the Earth Global Task Force, International Task Force on COVID response, my role there was really about communication and how could communication change the way people respond to, one, the CAB behaviors we talked about in the first phase of COVID, and then secondly, the vaccination. There was the ambitions of the government, as the whole world, were enormous. I mean, this was a huge challenge. We don't have to keep repeating that. And I had also come across this strategy document that was prepared by the government, which was hugely ambitious. This is only reflective of many other things that the government has done in the past. Apologies, but the thing is that ambitions are big, challenges are huge, but action and commitment is considerably less than what is expected when you have such huge ambitions. It doesn't reach there because it's easy to provide information again, but people aren't reading the information unless there is something that makes them actually change. And this is why when we talked about professional agencies, and perhaps that's also something that you meant about no health communication, that ultimately if we're looking at social progress and change in behaviors, we need to figure out how to trigger that change. We have learned from the past that any health communication is not about health. It is not about health. People have heard about health to death. They know, yes, if I take a vaccine, I'm going to get better. At some level, they understand that, but that's not a priority, because that's also preventive health behavior, which is not something the Indian public, and especially these families we're talking about who have less access, are even thinking about that. Their priorities are living, surviving on a daily basis. It's not about preventive healthcare. They also have a fatalistic attitude which says, okay, if God gives us some kind of illness, God will take care of it, this is God's will. Or they will have traditional practices.
COVID also sort of did make it fatalistic for
Of course
a
it did,
lot of
because the
people, yeah.
people's attitude towards vaccination later also was exactly the same. It hasn't changed in many, many years. It still exists. Because even now there are communities which are zero dose, though there's been great success in immunization, overall routine immunization, that is, children under 1. But the thing is that it's not moving because there are actually zero dose communities and the communication isn't reaching them. And it's not triggering the right kind of behavior.
Why do you say that communication is not reaching them?
So again, like I'm saying, that communication is what? Is information enough to
Okay.
change them?
Okay.
Are we giving them a proper value that
The
will make them-
benefit of...
And it's
okay.
not the health benefit I'm talking about, because that's given. You can communicate it, you can say it 100 times, but is that enough? And we've seen that it doesn't move the needle when it comes to deeply entrenched behaviors. Just communicate information alone, even informing about the benefits, practical benefits, functional benefits, is not enough.
So I'm wondering, I just want to put this, I'm wondering in COVID, many times, the fact that you could come back to work and get your salary only if you showed them the vaccination,
Would that have been a motivator, you're asking?
I'm wondering,
So
are you saying that?
there was a campaign that was developed. Most of the campaigns talked about, yes, vaccination will protect you against the severity of COVID. Yes, okay. So I think everybody knew that, but could question it. When we did a research, we did 3-legged research. This was in-depth amongst communities. Please understand communities is the most important aspect. Understand their lives, not just the subject. Understand where they're coming from and why they can or can't perform certain behaviors. In this research, while it threw up the obvious barriers and the obvious motivators, such as barriers being obviously misconceptions, myths, it doesn't work, COVID is crazy, doesn't exist, it's a government scheme, whatever it is, and the motive...
Trust in the vaccine.
Trust in the vaccine. So these were barriers. And on the other hand, the benefits of it were seen as, yes, I may not get COVID, I may not get sick, other people have taken it. The biggest motivator we actually found was, or let's say the biggest problem people went through was disruption in lives.
Yeah.
And therefore, would they be doing something? Would they take the action to win their old life back?
Okay.
That became the bigger motivator. As long as COVID remains, as long as people aren't getting vaccinated, the government isn't going to stop it, COVID will remain, and my life is going to continue to be awful. My kids are going to sit at home, they're going to be on mobile phones, my wife is going to be getting angry, having to deal with so many different things.
Okay, so going
That
on,
was
so
what it
carrying
was.
on with life, getting back to life.
So the line actually was, yes, it's time, I want to win my life back.
Oh,
Okay,
win my life back.
Win my life back. Because
Okay.
gave it a warrior feeling. Okay, this was a scenario in which COVID was very active and we are on a war footing. So it was based on this understanding that came from research. It
Okay,
came from research.
At this point, I have to get Nimish in. Because another thing, I'm going to disagree with you a lot today, KG. Okay? So one of the things which KG said was health and science don't go together, whereas...
I said that you are misinterpreting. I said that science communication is different, health communication is different.
Oh, let's find out
Let's
that.
not make them synonymous. Let's
No.
not make them synonymous.
I think...
Reporting a development in a laboratory is different from reporting from the primary health care center.
Okay. So, no, we'll simplify, don't worry, huh? I know how to catch KG. So, okay. Nimish sir, I want you to step in here and clear this misunderstanding about what is science communication, what is it or is it not something that the health communication could ride or kind of collaborate with, if not anything. Also, the fact that there is so much of government doing science, but how come we don't know anything about it? Please, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I would like to just connect with our fellow speakers, panelists. We must take lessons from our success stories, and one of the story was Do Boond Zindagi Ki polio campaign. Yeah, we were discussing today. So, in that communication model or strategy or agenda, source was obviously Ministry of Health and Dr. Harshvardhan, the then minister, and channel was Amitabh Bachchan. Message very clear, simple, palatable, easy to understand. Do boond zindagi ke liye, right? Zindagi ki, whatever. And receiver, our layman, stakeholders, variety of audience, parents, young adults, and so on. So in that communication model, there was clarity in various cultures, culture of health professional, content provider, culture of media, celebrities, and the culture of stakeholders. So here I am going to discuss science and health communication, but first I would love to introduce here the cultural distance model introduced in India by our fellow scientists Gohar Raza and Surjit Dabas and their colleagues in Kumbh Mela last more than 35-40 years. They are doing public awareness survey on science and technology, and all the researches are available on Google Scholar. So they presented very beautiful cultural distance model where they define one culture is related to content provider, it may be subject expert, scientist, and ministries and so on, and second culture is media. Which medium you are taking to convey the message. It may be digital, it may be celebrity, it may be campaign, it may be any awareness kind of thing. And third culture is our audience, viewer, receivers or listeners. So these understanding of these three cultures are mandatory to one it may be subject expert or scientist must learn about the media, and media scholars or journalists must know the content providers and the culture of lab or hospitals, what the R&D they are doing, and both the culture of lab and culture of media must understand the stakeholders, end users or consumers. So, and there is a difference between the cultures. So if we try to fill this gap, this distance, so we may set our path of success or our goals, what we are trying to achieve. In India, last 25 or 30 years, I am observing variety of efforts as KG sir started health communication successfully in IIMC, but today I don't know that course is there or not. The problem is sustainability. In 1995, lot of Indian universities started communication, health and science communication courses, but I wrote a paper in a book published by Springer, where I found in my qualitative research study that there three points were missing in these courses when these courses were designed. One is teachers who will teach these subjects. Number two, content, books, good publications, reading material, and three, jobs. These three mandatory requirements were missing, and समय के साथ साथ वो courses खत्म हो गए. Now Vigyan Prasar, I am in Vigyan Prasar from last 2 decades, and we started to re-establish these courses, and in workshop mode, a special paper, some CBCS or what, choice-based system courses. And as a part of our effort, we are producing these kind of books. packaging science for public interest. And when we did this conference in 2019 in Kolkata, Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute, where we invited scientists, policymakers, filmmakers, journalists, and so on, various stakeholders and collaborators, then one leading senior scientist, what he said, you cannot package science like this. Science is universal, science is here, science is there, you cannot package science. Then I requested and I defined the meaning of this term. We are not locking science on any, किसी हम बक्से में science को बंद नहीं कर रहे हैं. We are decorating science. We are disseminating science with, visuals and graphics and animation to reach to these stakeholders with, with pleasure of adaptability and his or her capacity. So again, as I already explained about the cultural distance model, scientists are packed in their labs, their research papers, technical jargons, they are writing research papers, and actually they are not responsible for communication. Now the role is number 2, जो है culture model में media or our channels. उनका role है कि to understand them, and scientists also must try to understand the media and stakeholders. Now, from last 15 years, I am happy to see the science communicators in our labs. India has more than 5,000 labs. In ICMR, ICAR, CSIR, DST, DBT, DRDO, and other water, energy, atomic energy, space. So we have earth sciences, more than 5,000 labs, and lakhs of scientists are working, not from here to Geneva, CERN and all. But again, the thing is, misconception is another, miscommunication is another challenge. So we will discuss in second round about how to deal with miscommunication, discommunication, rumors, and how the science communication, trained science communicator can deal with these kind of challenges.
So I'm a little curious, and I'll get KG in for explanation too, which is when you say science communication and teaching, I mean sort of training people, are you talking about science or what? Is there a curriculum that we have? Have you ever had that in your?
Yes. Okay. You see, our constitution very clearly mandates that we inculcate scientific temperament in our masses. So science journalism or science communication is aimed or targeted towards that end. The whole idea is to build a scientific temperament so that they start thinking rationally, scientifically, whether it is related to superstition, whether it is related to, that's science communication, essentially making science relevant to the common man in their day-to-day life. Health communication is, the target is where the principal stakeholder is the public at large, the beneficiary, how it reaches him, whether it is helping the primary health center is benefiting him or not, whether the problems in the hospitals, the patients, how they are being dealt with, by and large those issues are there. So that's why I made the distinction, though both have a scientific approach. Science communication, yes, at Makhanlal also we started science communication diploma program. Unfortunately, these programs are not taking off in the absence of guaranteed jobs. Unfortunately, what is happening is that we don't have, specific, whether it is government bodies or media organizations or NGOs who specifically insist on such qualifications. So in the absence of that, today majority of the students are going into media or for that matter into any discipline with the target of getting a job, not with the target of gaining knowledge. So when you have I'll give you this example. Last year I started at my Riva campus a program in rural journalism. I could not get 10 students for that, and I had to drop that program for the simple reason that the first question they are asking me is that where are the jobs? Because nobody is specifically demanding this, that yes, please come with a qualification in development communication. Why development communication studies have not taken off in this country? Initially, we were all into development journalism. IMC's brand international program is development communication. But that's not there for the, you know, Indians. It's now for foreign students, foreign scholars. Yes, absolutely. So development communication, because nobody is specifically asking for that. Nobody in media, nobody in development sector is saying, okay, come with a development sector communication, development communication diploma or degree, there is a job for you. No, then they are saying, why should we take a risk? So I think that, you know, as you, yes,
that is not what we should
absolutely.
be discussing, but pedagogically, I think it is the MSW social work
Yes.
which has taken that space.
Absolutely.
And that's something I think thinkers need to kind of get into.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we'll quickly go. You wanted to add,
Little
yeah.
comment. Sir, here we need to sensitize and communicate to our owners of media houses and chief editors or senior producers that these courses are there for your stakeholders, for your readers, because politics, sports, share market, film, Bollywood and all, these are essential components, no doubt, but these health, science, development is directly connected to your audiences. So you,
Media ownership.
and these are the courses where trained journalists are being prepared for your media house. So please consider them for these kind of things, because, you know, yesterday was a report that we are consuming microplastic with the size of credit card, I think every month or every year. So these kind of daily we are reading these kind of reports and.
Correct, I got it. Although, you know, the thing is that instead of putting it in silos, anyway, that's for other time. I want to come back to our SDG goals and talk about, say, the maternal mortality that we started with. How come we have better, you said institutional deliveries have led to good MMR. What is stopping IMR? Why isn't immunization happening? Any thoughts on that?
It's something vitally which is very close to my heart, and I think it's a strategic perspective as well. So when we started National Health Mission, we bridged the first set of gaps. We said institutional deliveries is a must. We said nutrition for mothers is a must. So we had door-to-door workers who counseled women. We incentivized providers. We incentivized families. However, we are at a point to step forward. We need to change our strategy. For instance, still in India, a large number of young girls get married. And
Child marriage, you mean to say?
child marriage or
Teenage
young age,
marriage.
teenage marriages, or even marriage at 18. Now Government of India has moved the age of childbirth to 21 years. So, but so far a large set of population in India still delivers all their children by the time they're 21, 22, 2-3 children, and then they get sterilized. However, we need to focus on family planning, birth spacing, delaying the first pregnancy. So family planning is a very important aspect which does not feature in the core narrative of SDG 3. Anemia, poor nourishment levels of women. So wasting and stunting and anemia are literally experienced irrespective of the socioeconomic background. 70% of women are anemic. So we need to step back and say, where do we need to invest now? We need to, I did a study a couple of years back on the cost efficiency of public health services, and we found that investment, adding another doctor is not going to bring more patients or greater quality services. Investing in sweepers in the hospital, frontline cadre, and that's where we need to invest. So we need to really think about where are we investing. We need to bring innovations to the people rather than trying to only rely on the common minimum or the basic healthcare services. We need to say what is the best quality care that I can provide to the woman. So these are some of the, so we need to look at the level 2, level 3 of strengthening our healthcare system.
What about the budget? How is the budget doing? Do we have money for women, for instance? I was reading your thing the other day where your company really is trying to bring that issue to the fore, that it's only 4% of the budget that really goes for women's care. Is that the right statistics?
I would not make a comment on the budget right now, Maithili, because I don't have my numbers handy. So it would be irresponsible. But one important thing that I would like to flag is last year, of only 2 indications of almost 42 drugs which were approved by US FDA, only 2 were for women's health. So we have been talking about need to invest in the R&D on women's health, need to invest in then taking that medicine to the woman till the last mile.
Affordability and accessibility.
I would not just say affordability, equity. Gender is such an important component, and women are always the last person standing in the line. It's a very interesting statistics that we observed in multiple countries on cardiovascular disorders. In India, cardiovascular disorder treatment is not very expensive, but it's very surprising, even in developed countries, more women die because of untreated cardiovascular diseases, because when they delay seeking treatment compared to men, and when they go to the provider, a lot of their complaints are dismissed as tantrums, attention seeking behavior. So globally, women are less likely to be taken seriously for their CVD symptoms than men. So so we are basically, so their gender is a very important issue where we need to invest to make that last mile covered. Nutrition is very important. We need to look at second, third level strategies, family planning, schooling, education, economy, connecting all the health indicators back with economic productivity is what we need to think about more seriously now.
So as a strategy then, to all of you, what do you think? We need to bring it all together, or we need to differentiate in terms of getting the maximum result?
I would actually, from the media communication point of view, I would like to make a point, and I was thinking about it when Nimish and KG were talking. What we need as people who deal with media is a well-formed mind, good analytical skills, and that is what universities nurture into us. And I, as a person who worked with the communities in non-profit sector, then I worked with BBC, I came to Ministry of Health, I worked in management consulting, and now I'm in the pharmaceutical industry. I feel this has given me a good 360-degree view of what's happening out there. I'm very empathetic to government. I'm not very critical because I've been there. When you're working for a population of 1.4 billion, your building block is not like you're working for a country like Fiji or a small island out there. We are literally looking, yeah, even or Australia. So the challenge is tough. So I think as media people, what we need to do is we need to expose ourselves to the challenges and what we say resources available at each side of the table on all the stakeholders, and that will actually give us a good quality output when we communicate. Because when I work with journalists now in my current role, I feel that journalists don't have time to do their homework. They tell me, if you can write the article, give it to me. They just publish it. Even with the typos, they would publish it. So somebody in my team would write the article, then it goes to the legal. So I have met very few journalists in last so many years who actually take the pain of doing their own research, having their own point of view, and putting a good piece out there together.
Just to one comment, sorry, I'll take a second only. You asked, should it work separately or should it work together? Rather simple. I'm sorry to say that question because everything is interconnected. You can't be in silos. There is interconnection. There has to be collaboration. We talked about earlier, but one needs to look at the expertise of different partners and bodies together and figure out who's really going to take the lead in a different area. Please do not give that communication to people who are just going to be writing messages. Give it to somebody professional who knows how to trigger that change. Science communication, one is just content and the other thing is how to communicate it to the community. It's not the same thing. So just that.
Yeah, just I'm touching how part. When we started one India Science Wire, it is India's premier science news and feature service, in which we request scientists to provide content, their research papers, and we have trained journalists, and they are making ready to print, ready to use science reports, news reports in science, environment, health, and various other sectors. And from various labs, we are receiving daily inputs, research papers, and findings, and so on. So here, my submission is, we need, number one is, we need to train our scientists, scholars, research paper writers to give one out-of-box column with the heading out of box or something, and they must train to just give some pointers for media and layperson. In a research paper, some small box can be planned for media and layperson, some pointers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out of this research, these 5 points are suitable for layman. Why I am doing this research? What is my conclusion and recommendation? So I saw this in some international journals, this practice, some pointers for layman and media. And second thing, when we making a strategy or some agenda or some kind of policy, we try to implement at grassroots level, and for this we need to develop a communication strategy where we can refine and define, for example, suppose we are saying that this much protein is required for, pregnant women or adolescent or teenage girl or adult man or women. But we cannot expect our labor class or our workers or section that from where they will get information that how much dal or egg or this milk I need for this number of protein. So they need simple information in their languages, regional languages, that how much sabji or anda aapko khana hai to fulfill your protein or your iron requirement or this thing. So that kind of strategies are required to transfer this the knowledge outlined in a policy or agenda or a research paper to grassroots level. That's it.
I just want to add something to that. When we talked about health and science communication being separate, and Maithili, and what you just talked about now, Maithili, you will also recall a combination of health and science, routine immunization. The communities did not understand how vaccination would help them ward off the diseases. They fell ill. And the thing is that we did not know, people did not know how to communicate the science of vaccination. Now, therefore, science and health. As we know how vaccines work, we had done it in demonstrative tools. Remember, Maithili? In which we said that, when the vaccine comes in, it's got a little bit of the devil in it, the enemy in it. It'll come in, and then the people, the cells inside, the blood cells will recognize that enemy and prepare an army to fight against it, okay?
So, demonstrated it in terms of making those kind of devices that were sort of taken to the community and then through the CBD workers.
That's right. It was delivered
that
through.
would be sort of shown to them in order to, for them to understand why vaccine is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for reminding.
And which is why I always say go to the professionals when it comes to understanding what's going to make them
I want to throw it open. Is anyone interested in asking any question? You.
Hello everyone, my name is Piyusha Sharma. I'm an assistant professor with DME. I just don't want to ask, but I would like to just add something over here. I have covered health communication with one of the leading news channels, and I covered health and science both at the same time. As sir said, it should not be, but it is taken together because they don't want individual journalists for every beat, especially when it comes to health and science. But there's one thing, as sir said, that we need to sensitize media editors and chief editors and people who own industry, but then that is something which is far-sighted, not very easy to achieve, but can we work on the other way, which I think can be easy in order to get more coverage of health and science, which I face as a challenge being a journalist when I was covering health was mostly when it comes to giving information in science and health. The terminologies, the research studies, they're so difficult to interpret even for a journalist, even if they are trained. Sometimes what happens is when the organizations, they want you to cover 4, 5, 6 news articles in a day. And mostly if I talk about the platform, digital is one such platform which is covering health and science more than TV or even print. Digital is covering that more. We have different sections. Every day we are publishing 2, 3, 4, 5 stories of health and science. But when it comes for the writers and the journalists to when it comes to the writers and journalists to write those articles and to cover that news, it becomes very difficult to write one article in a day. So what I meant to say here was that in order to communicate health communication, if you're writing, sir, I have also covered Vigyan Prasar a lot of times, stories of Vigyan Prasar. So what I mean to say is we can also work in a way where we can simplify it from the organization itself who is trying to get the coverage. It will be very easy and it will give a lot of space to the journalists to write it down, because it is a challenge. It should not be, but it is a challenge that the companies want you to write more than 4, 5 articles a day. And if you want to maintain that quality, it becomes very difficult for the journalist and the writer to write them. So it could be a help from people who are doing those research, and they can maybe probably hire someone to simplify it in the way that people can understand that. So I think it will give us more coverage of health and science. Because
Actually, it's a very beautiful idea, which academicians should be grabbing on. I was having a conversation with Amrish sir the other day about having these mid-level training sessions for journalists, and science journalism, I think, is probably should be started at that level rather than starting it at an UG level. Where you get the mid-level professionals to come in and sort of re-educate themselves, like most of us are doing now with Udemy and everything. So this is something, KG sir, you are here, you are one of those person who will matter a lot in academic policy making, and we have a platform like ICAN which can diversify and actually look at these sort of opportunities in order to enhance what Nimish sir is also here trying to advocate for this to come in. That's a very good idea. Thank you so much.
In fact, just adding to what you said, Maitli, I think collaboration with industry can make this conversation more vibrant and meaningful.
In fact, that is my reason, Prachi, why all of you are here. Otherwise, I know that initially it's difficult gelling. But I think we all have to get out of our comfort zones and our own language. We have to fall into that territory which is slippery for us, because only then we will be able to bring out something that is new, novel, and needed. That is, one important thing. Yes, please.
Just let me make a confession. The confession is that my university also runs tens of UG programs. But I think somewhere along the way we made a mistake. Yeah. I think that the very fact that journalism education was earlier confined to PG.
Correct. We agree.
I think that by making it UG, what we have done is that we have in a way cut off a lot of people coming from different streams from coming into this discipline. Now a student of science, if that student of science who has done his, her, he, UG in science has come to science, I mean they would have been the ideal candidate rather than a student of history trying to learn the ropes of science communication. Similarly, somebody with an economics background coming and learning, you know, so that would have made more sense. But now that this has happened and this clock cannot be reversed, so let's try to make the best of it, and let's try to make, and I'm sounding a little this thing too, I would say, optimistic, but let's make health communication and science communication more glamorous than political communication or sports communication. It's very important because, you know, prior to COVID, health and education related news was confined to single digits in terms of percentage. But post COVID, and that was the perhaps among the very few, I would say, positives of, you know, the COVID corona pandemic, is that science and health reporting, education reporting has received a boost. Rural areas, people are going to find out, people are talking about vaccine, people are talking about vaccine resistance. This momentum should not be lost. And I think more and more students should be, even media schools, whether it is Manavrachna, DME, Makanlal, IIMC, we should all be somehow, you know, I should say, encouraging our students to take up health reporting, take up science reporting. You know, we should make it as part of an agenda, that because there is a great demand for trained, skilled people in these disciplines. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks, and I'll also I echo exactly what KG sir has been trying to say, that it is time that we reinvent, and the silver lining, KG sir and everybody, is the fact that now NEP 2020 talks about the interdisciplinary focus, and so nothing is lost really. And we do see that a lot of us, like even I suffered from the math phobia, but you know, I've actually started doing maths, and believe me or not, I'm doing class 8th maths again right now, because it's not so dangerous as it was then. So the whole idea is, because I've realized that maths is really the basis of a lot of research that one is trying to understand and analyze, especially in today's digital world. So, so with that, I think, I don't know, you started the panel discussion by saying all is well, so we forgot about the SDG. We said, you know, everything is okay, let's now solve other problems of the world. But I'm sure to the scholars there was, there were those nuggets that you have been looking for, and with the media taking it up, I mean, you know, our knowledge management repository at DME, and with even social media coverage that we will be giving to this panel discussion, I'm sure there will be more number of people who will be learning from what we talked about today. Thank you so much. My sincere you know, gratitude to all of you. KG sir, Prachi, Kalyani left, Nimish sir, thank you so much, and my lovely audience, thank you once again. You missed such an important thing, Amresh sir. हाँ प्लीज देखिएगा, एक हमारा प्रोग्राम बन रहा है आगे का. Yeah. So thank you very much. Grateful to you. I would actually want to also formally congratulate the Department of Journalism and Media Studies, which is under Kiran Bala, Dr. Kiran Bala's you know, what should I say, control, you know, I don't know, leadership. She's really this leader who drives everything, and more than a leader, for me, she's like this genie. So I tell her, oh, today I was thinking, ho jayega. And I love that spirit, and God bless. Thank you so much for your presence here. Thank you. Do a little bit of PR for this book. So my request to each one of you is to please, it is so reasonably priced. So where will they get it though?
150 and 10% discount.
But where?
ICAN Delhi office, Noida office.
तो अब नोएडा जाना होगा सर, ये तो मत हाँ पता है हाँ. So I want each one of us to possess this and read it and prepare this to go into volumes, because I think that is a very important thing which science communication requires. Thank you so much.